Excellent. Morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to our webinar today on Homefront and PlanSwift. I'm Lauren from Thrive, and Shane from Thrive is going to run today, so I'll hand over to him.
Hi, everybody. Shane from Thrive, and today we're going to have a look at Homefront and working in conjunction with PlanSwift. Homefront is a financial management system for residential construction and has a particular strengths for volume builders. And PlanSwift, what we're using it here is as a 2D takeoff tool, but it has other functions as well, and we want to show the two working together. So here we've got what we're seeing on the screen is Homefront, and looking at some of the workflow. So estimating setup, where we define what we're going to sell and how we're going to cost things, and we produce estimates. We move on to then managing the project and producing purchase orders, and finally to invoice processing. We're going to focus on the estimating side, and that's the core of the system. And where we have volume home builders, they quite often would have standard models or houses that they sell. So we've got a library of models. If I go in here, I'll see all the different models. I've got a list of models, and they might be coded and have a description. And so we might, as a end customer, buy a particular house, standard design, but then we have the option to add things to it. So not only do we have models, but we also have model-specific options and global options. So we might just add something to the standard house, and that global option might apply to all houses, and then specific options might only apply to a certain type of house. So you can buy something for the Chelsea Classic that only applies to the Chelsea Classic. And let's have a look at the Chelsea Classic. So a model is the data that we store is a bill of quantities. So all the things we need to purchase to construct that house. And a model will have a code, it'll have a description, whether it's active or not. So these will be things that you'll be offering to the customers to purchase. And over time, some of the models might no longer be saleable, so they become inactive. And we have some other attributes of a house. So how many bedrooms, how many bathrooms, size, and so on. Might even have a style. And that information might be presented in a sales system. What we've got here is our bill of quantities. So we have a purchase order index, which is used to group together items that are going to go out in a purchase order. And we have an item code and description, all the things that you need to purchase in terms of materials or services to actually get the house built. And then we have the quantity of those items. That's what we store against a model. And elsewhere in the system, we have pricing and vendor data. So if I was to then show you where are we actually building these different models. So if I want to build it in, say, Alexandria, it's going to cost $281,000 to build this model. So what we've got in Alexandria, we have the default vendors, and we have the pricing for these items for those default vendors. Okay, and this screen then, it's configurable in terms of what we want to see. I've displayed all the things that I would be interested in seeing, but you can, you can right-click and add additional columns or hide columns if they're not particularly relevant. And that is something that's goes throughout the system in terms of it's configurable and the way you can display data. So this is currently displaying it, sorting and totaling on the PO index. So what we anticipate the purchase orders that will be raised. But we can change that. So I can ungroup. I might want to group on the vendor to see what the total spend for a vendor is. So here's our vendors and here's the total spends. So for Blinds Plus, we might get from that supplier, we might get two different types of work, the blinds and also the fly screens, and they go on separate purchase orders. So just showing the versatility and configurability of the system. And then this area is very important. It will determine what suppliers we use when we're building that area. And currently this is coming out at 281,000, but if I build it in a different area, say Bondi, it comes to 282,000, so it's about $1,000 difference. And why would that be? So one example would be where we use different vendors. So where we go? Is the fencing, temporary fence is in Bondi, comes from Coastal Hire, and that's 35 meters at $10 a meter. But if we build it in Alexandria, we're using Ready Fence, and it's slightly cheaper at $7.50. And just another example of that might be concrete. So in Alexandria, we get the concrete from Advanced Ready Mix, 191 dollars per cube. But in Bondi, code 62, concrete supply, different supplier, high mix, and this is more expensive, 221. So that will be the reason why it would cost different amounts in the different areas, because we have different suppliers and different prices for those suppliers. And this is all configurable in the system and is designed so that, particularly for volume home builders, they're building a lot of these. They want to be able to build them quickly and in terms of the preparation of the build information. So having established the cost information, so what we're looking at, that cost is the current cost in the system. And as we know, particularly over the last few years, the cost has changed, particularly materials prices have changed substantially. So we need to be able to manage that process. So having worked out the cost of a particular house type, the Chelsea Classic, then we might also want to store that information, and we might see it stored in different periods, so perhaps a monthly period. So I've got this thing called a sales pricing worksheet. So in February, I'm recording for that particular house type in the different areas what the different cost is. And I can then apply a markup to that to get my sales price. And this sales price will then be presented in the sales system, which is another component to Homefront. But we store that as a baseline. The costs might be changing, items might be changing, but we store this and we can always report back to it. And this is important when you consider that when you're quoting to a customer, you're quoting the sales price. We also want to know what the basis of that is, the cost is. And we've got that baseline, and it might be some time between the original quote and when the contract is signed. So we can also always come back and review that cost that it was based upon at the time of the quote and see if it's still valid before we decide to go ahead with the contract. And so when we're producing this sales worksheet, we also have the choice of what cost we want to use. So in this case, I chose what the current costs were at this time. Okay, but we also we store in information cost movements throughout the system. So I'll just briefly touch on that. So in our vendor pricing menu, have a look at the supplier Hymix, which was one of the concrete suppliers. We got a list of things they supply. I'm interested. So notice this yellow filter bar up top. It'll show me all the items that have 32 for 32 MPa concrete in there. And so this is the current price is $221 per cube. And we see that we have recorded the previous price. So that was yesterday. I changed the price. And we have a price change coming also in September. Okay, so when you're setting what your anticipated costs are, you can choose any of these different pieces of information to store that information on. So this helps to get good information on your cost and sales. Okay, so how do we use this information when we've actually got a sale for a particular home? So we move on to the next stage. So into the production stage. So I've got here all my list of jobs. So I'm, this is focused on a volume home builder setup, building different jobs in different areas. And I'm going to look at this job number here. Okay, so there's nothing in this job at this stage. So this job is, we're building the Chelsea Classic, and we're building it in the Mossman area. So we'll get the Mossman suppliers coming in and the Mossman prices for those suppliers. And I can do a takeoff. I've got a number of different ways I can do that. I can do it item by item, but typically in a bill of quantities, there might be 500 items. So you don't want to do that, reinvent the wheel every time. So we can use our models, our assemblies, and here's a list of the standard models that I've got. And I want to use my standard model for the Chelsea Classic. I select that, and I want one of those. So all the quantities that are stored against that model will be used in this job. So the quantities that come through now, okay that. And close, and save. And I'll take a view, customer. All right, so that's come through in the Mossman area. Building this Chelsea Classic is going to come to 284,000. And here's all my items. You see there's quite a few different items there. And these are the standard quantities associated with that model. But we might need to change them. So, if we're building this house type in a particular area, the site layout might be different. The site size might be different. There might be some particular requirements in Mossman that we have to adjust. So we can go through and, we can adjust items, we can adjust pricing if need be, but we're using the standard pricing in the system. We can adjust suppliers if we find that we want to use a different supplier. And the system facilitates all that. You got different views of what we can see. So this is just a big listing of all the items, but we've also got by PO index. So this is the list of purchase orders that we'd expect to produce. And we can produce them, some customers like to produce them all at once, others like to produce them in different sections. So just issuing the purchase orders as required. And this allows me to, I can select individual ones, or I can select a grouping and produce the purchase orders. But what I want to get across from this session is the different ways that we can adjust those quantities from the standard design. So I can do it as I show here individually, but that can be quite time consuming because there's quite a large number. So we want to be able to do that quickly. And so I just want to go back and show you a different model. So rather than looking at the Chelsea Classic, which has standard quantities, I'll show you another way of doing it. Standard. This is the Chelsea Classic with formulas. So it's the same list of items. It's got standard quantities in there, but it's also got these formulas. So, and you'll notice that some of these formulas, they are used multiple times. So the site perimeter applies to the fencing and applies to the termite control. Ground floor area applies to the curing, applies to the layers of mesh. So rather than when we're updating something, updating individual items, we can use these formulas to update multiple items at the same time. And it can be that it's just, we might measure from the drawing, the site perimeter, and you could go and change individual items, but using the PlanSwift integration, we can measure from the drawing these things and then do it in a quicker fashion. And it can be simple. So we take an area or a length from the drawing and bring it in here. So that these will be areas, but it can also be more complex than that. So this one is a volume. So we might measure an area from the drawing, and then I'll show you some of the detail of what we can store here. So that formula for the slab volume is, if I go and edit that, I can show you that it's the ground floor area multiplied by 0.4. And other ones we might have the wall wrap area, for example. That could be the building perimeter multiplied by the height minus the garage door area. So you can build in quite complex formulas, and using some of the other parameters that we've identified. And you can use your standard operators. You can use greater than or less than. You can use if statements. There's a range of things that you can use. Your trigonometrical functions. And you might do that, for example, if you're trying to convert, say, a roof area. So we've got a roof area which we measure on the drawing on plan, but it's actually at an angle. So we need to use some trigonometry to work out what the true quantity is. So here I've got a formula that says the roof area multiplied by trigonometrical function, so cos of the angle, which will give us the true area. And so we can build in these formulas to save us time when it comes to the production estimating. Because although we store standard quantities against a model, that gives us a very good basis for an actual job. There are things that will change, and we want to be able to get that accurate estimate quickly. So using those formulas, pick a different job. So pick my next job. Same house design. Got to do assembly takeoff or model takeoff. But I'm going to use the assembly with formulas now. And all the formulas that I specified in that are now presented here. So I can then put in my site perimeter, ground floor area, fresco, porch, lighting points, PowerPoints, building perimeter, ceiling height, garage door area. And now I'll do my takeoff. And it will take these quantities and put them into, and do the calculations that are required and put them into against the relevant items. So site perimeter, put in 150 there, it came down and overrided the standard quantities to give us the actual quantities for a particular job. And then when I do the OK, that comes through into my job. And I get my budget for this particular job. Slightly different quantities, so slightly different value. One of the great benefits here is the standard things that don't change, I don't have to remeasure, they're included. I only get a change to the things that are different. And that gives me some accurate way of going forward. But where do I get those standard quantities from? So this is where PlanSwift comes in. So here's what I did earlier. So PlanSwift allows us to bring in drawings and take measurements. And the principal measurements that we're looking at are counts, lengths, and areas. And it gives us a template of things that we might want to measure from those drawings. And one nice thing that PlanSwift does is it gives us a metric template to start with for house construction. So, and you can do a trial of this software. You'll get that metric takeoff. You can use it, metric template, and then you can adjust it, add to it as required. So that's the template, and I've used these templates to do my takeoff. You see the different areas that I've measured, and then this shows the different drawings, different pages in my list of drawings, I should say. And so on the ground floor drawing, I've measured these different things, and these are the quantities of these measurements. So these will then could be the measurements that I used in my takeoff for the Chelsea Classic in Homefront. And I could simply type those in, or it will show you actually the automation of that. And how do you get these quantities? So here's one I've done already, but if I go to a blank one, so here's a blank job. And so I've got my template here. I've got all my drawings. These are the different pages in my list of drawings. And I just want to move this around. So on the ground floor, let's say I want to get the building perimeter. So this is a length type count. I just click on the different points. That gives me a perimeter at 57. I might do an area measurement. Let's say I'll measure the alfresco. So you have area measurements and length measurements, and as simple as that, to pick from your list template and measure the items, and it will display the quantities over here. And I'll just go back to the one I did earlier and illustrate some of the points from that. So I measured on my ground floor, the alfresco, the garage area, the porch, building perimeter, And on another drawing, I measured the garage door area. Another drawing, I measured the security fencing required. I might measure the drainage, might measure the slab area, and then all these would be used to, these might be things that are slightly different from the standard design. So could you be used to update that for a production estimate? We've also got a count. So where a different type of measurement where we're doing a count, we might count the different light fittings and the different power points. And also here's where I might use my roof measurements to convert the plan area at a slope to the actual area required, and I measure all my hips and valleys and ridges. So having done that, then in the Homefront job, I could bring these quantities through. I can bring them through either manually, or I can use the integration to do that. So going back to Homefront, I pick a different job. This job. And when I do my assembly takeoff, you see I've already selected this PlanSwift project that I'm working with. And if I use this assembly with formulas, you see the quantities are coming through now from PlanSwift. And some of the quantities can be manually entered where they're not on the drawing. So if it's a variable that you might want to change, in this case, I'm going to leave it the same and do a pass, and it's going to then populate with all those quantities to the relevant places in the system. So I didn't have to type them in again, and it's going to, that side perimeter might be used in multiple locations, so it's going to save me time to get those quantities into the right place. I do it OK, and that then does the measurements for the job, and it's ready to order. Do a save, and this job is going to be $276,000 based upon those quantities. So you can see that, we had the original standard one was 280, but based upon the quantities that are measured in this drawing, it's updated in all the relevant places, and it's come to a grand total of 276. And then this is ready to order. So there's my list of orders that I would create. I can tick them off individually or in a group and generate the purchase orders for that job. Okay, so that is what I wanted to show you for today. So we might have time for some questions.
Yep, I'll unmute everyone for you, Shane.
Yeah. So what I was looking to do today was to show you some of the power of Homefront in terms of how it can be used by volume home builders, and also then how it can integrate with PlanSwift for easily getting to your quantities required for production estimating. Do we have any questions on that?
Nope, doesn't look like it.
Okay, well, if you think of any questions, you can always follow us up, and we can, do a one-on-one session if there's interest. And we'll also, do we send out a recording, or do we publish the recording of this? So it's available as a refresher.
Yep, no problems. Thanks so much, Shane. That was great.
Okay, thank you. Hope
Thanks
you enjoy
everyone for
that.
coming.
Thanks, Shane.
Thanks, Shane.
Cheers. Bye now.
Thanks, Shane.